The diner sits in the corner of the city like it has for decades, with its checkered floor tiles and neon sign that flickers faintly against the morning sky. Sunlight has started to stretch its fingers across the street, slipping in through the blinds, painting gold stripes across the booths. The smell of grease and coffee still lingers, stubborn even after hours of scrubbing. Chairs are flipped on tables. Counters gleam. To the outside world, it looks abandoned for the day, waiting for the next rush of customers to pour in. But one booth isn't empty. In the far corner, a young waitress lies curled up, her uniform still clinging to her from the double shift she pulled. Her apron has been folded into a makeshift pillow, her hair falling across her cheek as she breathes in slow, uneven rhythms. She's too still for someone who only meant to rest her eyes. Exhaustion radiates off her, the kind that sinks deep into bones, the kind that doesn't disappear with a nap. Her name, at least from the schedule pinned in the back office, is Laya, the new hire. No one paid her much attention this week. She barely spoke, kept her head down, worked hard, and vanished when her shift ended. Only tonight, she hasn't vanished. She has stayed, sinking into the vinyl seat like it's the only safe harbor she can find. What she doesn't know is that someone is watching. At the counter, a man lingers. He looks like just another late customer, dressed in plain clothes, a simple jacket, nothing that screams importance. He has a cup of coffee in front of him, untouched, steam curling faintly into the empty air. But he isn't here for the coffee. He's here for something else entirely. His name is Daniel Cross. The world knows him as the billionaire CEO who built an empire of restaurants, hotels, and real estate towers. But today, no one here knows him at all. Not in this diner. Not in this disguise. Daniel has been moving quietly through his own company for weeks, slipping in and out of kitchens, stockrooms, and storefronts under the cover of being a consultant. His board thinks it's a publicity stunt. His executives think it's unnecessary. But Daniel wanted something more than quarterly reports and profit margins. He wanted to see what really happened in the corners of the empire that carried his name. And now, in this moment, what he sees is something that rattles him more than any balance sheet ever could. A waitress, barely out of girlhood, asleep in the booth after hours because she has nowhere else to go. Daniel doesn't move. He studies her carefully, as though the sight alone might reveal the truth. He knows the look of exhaustion. He's seen it in employees working endless shifts, in executives pulling all-nighters. But this feels different. This is survival, not ambition. He leans back, his fingers curling lightly against the counter as questions stir in his mind. Why here? Why now? Why would someone choose the corner of a diner booth over the comfort of a bed? A sound breaks the stillness, the shuffle of fabric against vinyl, a small groan as the girl shifts. Lila's eyelashes flutter, her body stiffening as awareness pulls her out of sleep. She blinks rapidly, her gaze darting around the empty diner until it lands on the man sitting at the counter. Her breath hitches. Panic flashes in her eyes like a deer caught in headlights. She sits up too quickly, pushing stray strands of hair from her face, fumbling with the wrinkled apron she had clutched like a blanket. Her voice comes out rushed, apologetic, cracked from fatigue. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll go. Just give me a second. Daniel doesn't move closer, doesn't raise his voice. He only lifts a hand slightly, his tone calm, measured. No need to rush. It's fine. But she's already on edge. Her posture is defensive, her eyes searching for judgment, ready for the reprimand she expects to hear. It's the look of someone used to being told to move along, used to occupying spaces where she doesn't belong. You must have been tired, Daniel says, keeping his words soft, almost conversational. Long shift. She nods once, but the hesitation in her eyes betrays her. Double, she mutters. I didn't mean to stay. Just closed my eyes. Her hands tighten around the apron, folding and refolding the fabric until it's little more than a crumpled ball. Daniel notices the small details. Her fingernails short and uneven, the faint tremor in her fingers, the way she avoids his gaze as though eye contact itself is dangerous. What's your name? He asks after a pause. Her lips part, reluctant, but the answer slips out anyway. Lila. Daniel leans back slightly, repeating it in his mind, committing it to memory. Lila, a name that already feels heavier than it should. For a moment, neither of them speak. The hum of the old fridge in the kitchen fills the silence, steady and indifferent. A clock ticks faintly on the wall, marking seconds that stretch far too long. Daniel studies her without prying. There's a hollowness in her eyes that doesn't come from one sleepless night. There's a story there, buried beneath exhaustion and pride. A story she doesn't want to tell. Finally, he asks the question that's been circling in his mind since he first saw her curled up in the booth. Do you have somewhere to go after this? The words land heavier than he intends. Lila freezes, caught between instinct and truth. She doesn't answer immediately. Her jaw works as if she's chewing on silence, trying to find an excuse that will sound believable. But her body betrays her. The way her shoulders dip, the flicker of fear in her eyes, the way she hugs the apron tighter against her chest. Daniel doesn't press. He waits, the patience of a man who's negotiated countless boardroom deals now redirected toward a girl barely holding herself together. And in that tense quiet, he realizes she doesn't need to answer. The silence stretches, thin and fragile, as if the smallest sound might shatter it. Lila lowers her gaze to the table, tracing the edge of the laminated menu with her thumb, avoiding his eyes. When she finally speaks, her voice is low, stripped of the defenses she tried to put up a moment ago. No, she whispers. Not right now. Daniel absorbs the words slowly, his chest tightening in a way he doesn't expect. She says it with such quiet finality, as though it's a truth she has already accepted. His eyes sweep over her again, noticing what he missed earlier. The faded seams on her uniform. The way her shoes, though polished, are scuffed thin at the soles. The subtle hollows beneath her cheekbones that speak of skipped meals. None of this is temporary fatigue. It's survival worn into her skin. What happened? He asks carefully, the tone gentle enough that it doesn't sound like prying. Lila shakes her head, but the truth pushes its way out anyway, as though she's been holding it too long and it finally demands release. My mom, she passed away last year. Cancer. Her throat tightens around the word, her lips pressing together before she forces herself to continue. My dad wasn't around. Never was, really. After she was gone, it was just me. Her voice wavers, but her eyes stay fixed on the menu, refusing to look at him. Rent kept going up. I worked 2 jobs, tried to keep the apartment. But it wasn't enough. Landlord didn't care. One night I came home, and everything I owned was in the hallway. That was it. Daniel feels something shift in him, a sharp pang cutting through the detachment he usually wears like armor. He has read about evictions in quarterly reports, seen the numbers about turnover and homelessness, but never has he heard it laid bare like this. Raw, unpolished, human. She lets out a shaky breath. I've been trying to figure it out since then. Couch hopping at first, then well, sometimes I just don't have a place. Here, at least, it's warm. Safer than the shelters. People leave me alone. Her brittle laugh catches him off guard. Funny, right? Working in a restaurant I can't even afford to eat at. Daniel's throat tightens, but he keeps his expression steady. He can't let on who he is, not yet. Not when the truth might push her further away. That's not funny, he says softly. That's... He stops, searching for words that don't sound like pity, because pity is the last thing she needs. Lila shrugs, as if brushing off her own story, though the weight of it lingers in the air like smoke. It's just the way it is. Daniel studies her closely. She doesn't speak like someone looking for charity. She speaks like someone who has learned to make peace with hardship, even if it's killing her slowly. That quiet strength unsettles him more than tears ever could. The diner glows brighter as daylight spills through the blinds, cutting across the booths in sharp stripes. Outside, the city stirs awake. Delivery trucks rattle past. Horns echo faintly. Footsteps scatter along sidewalks. Inside, the air is still, heavy with the weight of Lila's confession. Daniel leans forward slightly, his elbows resting on the counter, his coffee long gone cold. For years, he's been a man of numbers, of projections and profits. Yet now he finds himself staring at something no spreadsheet could ever calculate. A girl who has nothing left, yet somehow still sits upright, defiant against despair. Lila, he says carefully, the name steady on his tongue. What if I told you I could help? Her head snaps up, eyes narrowing instantly. Suspicion hardens her expression, drawing invisible lines between them. Help? How? You don't even know me. Her reaction is swift, almost instinctive, like someone who's learned that offers of kindness often hide conditions. She studies him sharply, her shoulders tensing as though preparing for disappointment. Daniel doesn't flinch. Sometimes it doesn't take long to see when someone deserves a chance. Lila lets out a sound that's half laugh, half scoff. Yeah, right. People don't give out chances for free. Not without expecting something back. The words sting more than he expects, because she isn't wrong. In his world, everything has a cost, every favor a clause, every deal a hidden agenda. He knows it better than anyone. But here, in the quiet of this diner, he feels something unfamiliar, an urge to strip all of that away. I'm not talking about strings, he says firmly. I mean a roof over your head. Food. A little stability until you find your footing again. Her eyes flash with both disbelief and wariness. Why? Why would you do that for me? I'm just some waitress you barely met. Daniel doesn't answer right away. Because the truth, that he owns this restaurant, this entire chain, that he's lived his life behind walls of privilege, would sound like a cruel joke if he said it now. She doesn't need to see him as a billionaire. Not yet. She needs to see him as someone who actually means what he says. Because sometimes, he replies quietly, helping someone is the right thing to do. No agenda. No catch. Her jaw tightens, her hands curling into fists in her lap. She doesn't believe him. Not fully. And why should she? Trust isn't something she can hand out lightly. Not after nights spent fighting to survive. Not after being abandoned by every system that was supposed to protect her. I'll think about it, she says finally, the words clipped, cautious. Her tone carries both a warning and a shield, as though to remind him she won't be taken advantage of. Daniel nods slowly, not pushing further. He knows that forcing her would only drive her away. What matters is that she hasn't walked out. Not yet. The diner's door creaks open with a sharp squeal of its hinges, and both Daniel and Lila glance toward the sound. Sunlight spills in, cutting through the fluorescent glow, and a figure steps inside. One of the morning managers, a man in his 30s balancing a clipboard under one arm. His expression is casual at first, the face of someone expecting to find a closed diner and silence. But then his eyes land on Daniel. Mr. Cross? The manager blurts, surprise snapping through his voice before he can stop himself. The word slices the air clean in half. Lila freezes, her gaze darting from the manager to the man across from her. Her eyes narrow as though she hasn't heard right. Then she repeats it, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. Mr. Cross. Daniel's heart kicks against his ribs. For weeks he's managed to slip beneath the surface, his cover held together by quiet introductions and vague explanations. But here, now, with one careless slip of recognition, it unravels. Lila's brows knit, confusion colliding with disbelief. Wait, you're him. Daniel exhales, his disguise crumbling under her stare. He straightens, his tone measured, steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Yes, I'm Daniel Cross. Her lips part as though she's about to laugh, but no sound comes. Her voice, when it breaks free, is laced with anger and betrayal. You're the owner? The millionaire. He nods once. The weight of the admission hangs between them, heavy as stone. You sat here, she says, her voice rising, each word striking like a blow. You listened to me. You let me pour everything out, like you were just some guy, like you understood. And the whole time you were him. Daniel opens his mouth to speak, but she isn't finished. Her chair scrapes harshly against the floor as she stands. Her body trembling with fury, she doesn't try to hide. You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to sleep in a booth because you don't have a home. You don't know what it's like to wonder if the tips will cover dinner, or if you'll have to skip it again. You don't know what it's like to live with nothing. Her words hit him harder than any boardroom accusation ever could. And for once in his life, he doesn't have a defense. No polished speech, no clever rebuttal, no shield of authority. The manager shifts awkwardly at the door, unsure whether to stay or leave, but Daniel barely notices. His eyes are locked on Lila, on the rawness burning in her expression. She's not just angry at him. She's angry at a world that has allowed someone like him to sit atop it, while people like her claw their way through each day. I should have known, she mutters, shaking her head, voice brittle. People like you always have an angle. Daniel stays seated, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. For the first time in years, he feels small, not because of her accusation alone, but because of the truth buried in it. The tension inside the diner is sharp enough to cut. Lila stands with her arms crossed tightly, her jaw set, her voice trembling not with weakness but with anger. Daniel remains seated, his hands resting on the counter, his face stripped of the commanding confidence he usually wears like armor. For the first time in years, he feels exposed, not as the CEO, not as the billionaire, but as a man staring at the consequences of a life built too far above the ground. "You're right," he says finally, his voice low but unwavering. "I don't know what it's like to lose everything. I don't know what it's like to wonder where I'll sleep or whether I'll eat tomorrow. I can't pretend I've walked in your shoes." But he pauses, his eyes locking onto hers, earnest in a way he hasn't been in a very long time. "I want to understand. And I want to help. Not as Daniel Cross, the CEO. Not as a man with money. As someone who can't stand the thought of leaving you like this." Lila's lip trembles, though her glare doesn't soften. Words don't fix anything. People make promises all the time, and then they disappear. "Do you know how many times I've heard, 'I'll help you'? And guess what? They don't." Her voice cracks on the last word, but she steadies herself, her shoulders squaring. She's not asking for sympathy. She's demanding truth. Daniel rises slowly, careful not to crowd her, careful not to break the fragile thread of trust she hasn't completely severed. "Then don't believe my words," he says. "Watch what I do. Let me prove it. One meal. One morning. Stay just long enough to see if I'm lying." The clock ticks on the wall. The hum of the fridge fills the space. Lila stares at him, her breathing uneven, her body tense as though she's ready to bolt at any second. But then her arms loosen, just slightly. Her eyes flicker toward the window, toward the world outside that waits with all its cold uncertainty. She exhales slowly, and her voice softens. "Breakfast," she says. "That's all." Daniel nods, relief flickering across his face though he keeps his expression steady. "Breakfast," he agrees. Minutes later, the sizzle of bacon fills the air, the smell of coffee brewing fresh again. The diner, once heavy with silence, begins to feel alive. Daniel sits across from her, watching as she takes her first cautious bite. She doesn't thank him. She doesn't smile. But she stays. And in staying, she gives him the one thing he knows is worth more than money, a chance. As sunlight streams brighter through the blinds, Daniel feels something shift deep inside. The empire he built, the fortune he commands, it all seems hollow compared to this moment. A young woman, bruised by life, yet unbroken, teaching him more about strength than any boardroom ever could. For the first time in a long time, Daniel Cross knows his life is changing. Not through contracts, not through power plays, but through the quiet decision of one girl who dared to sleep in his diner and challenged him to become something more than a man of wealth. And as he watches Lila lift her coffee to her lips, her gaze still wary but no longer closed, he realizes this is not the end of a conversation. It's the beginning of a story that neither of them expected, a story that may redefine what it means to be rich.